Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel where I demo CrossFit workouts. It's almost Halloween, so I have some true scary stories to share with you guys. I found all of these on the True Scary Stories subreddit, and I want to share with you guys the interesting ones. So let's get right into it. This one is called The Bus Stop. When I was still in school, I would normally take the bus most of the time until I got my license. The bus stop wasn't far from my house at all, it was just a few blocks. There were two separate paths you could take to get there from my house. One was just walking along the road and taking a right, walking down some more road and you would be there. The second path was just a straight shot from the stop, but it was through a patch of very thick forest. The first path was maybe a 15-minute walk, while the second path through the forest was about 10 minutes. I was running late one day, so I decided to take the path through the forest. It was the start of winter, so it was pitch black outside at the time that I had to wake up for high school. I was either a freshman or a sophomore at this time. I started on the path and kept my face pointed forward despite the eagerness to look over my shoulder at every snap and crack. But just as I saw the bus stop through the trees, I heard a very loud snap, like a tree had just been ripped apart. It was so loud that it echoed in the fields surrounding the area. I stormed forward, terrified out of my mind. Thankfully, there was another kid there. I think his name was John or Jay. We were in the same grade, so I debated bringing up the loud crack, but I didn't want to sound crazy if he somehow didn't hear it. But he beat me to it and he said, "Dude, what the hell was that? Did you hear that?" Mind you, it was still pitch black out and we could barely see each other standing like 2 feet apart. I didn't know him very well since he was newer to our school. I didn't really want to bring that much attention to it, thinking that if it was something supernatural, we should just ignore it. So I simply nodded and he picked up on my unwillingness to talk about it, so he also just nodded. I was standing way closer than I normally would since I'm incredibly awkward, so I would just stand on the opposite side as everyone else. But this was a very special exception, so I just stood a couple of feet away, seeking just a semblance of comfort from what just had occurred. He went on his phone, and so did I, but I felt something was watching me, not behind me, but in front of me. I just moved my eyes to look, keeping my head down, and saw a figure dash into view about 15 feet away. It looked like a deer, which was very common from where I'm from, so I just ignored it until I felt so uneasy that I had to take another glance. It stood up. I looked over to the other kid, hoping that he had also seen it, but he was glued to his phone. I looked back, and at the same time, whatever the hell that was looked at me. It was still dark as night, so I couldn't make out any facial features, just a shadow. It looked back and got back down on all fours and ran so incredibly quick it was just a blur. It ran back into the field that was behind it, and not a minute later the bus pulled up. I walked onto the bus first and the kid sat behind me, and before he sat down he said, "That was crazy." It was the most serious I'd ever seen him, so I know he at least caught a glimpse of whatever that thing was. Does anybody know what it could have been? It still haunts me to this day. Okay, so let me get this straight. It sounds like the guy saw a creature or something, like a shadow, and then he saw it dash quickly away. That definitely is creepy. I don't know what it could have been. This actually reminds me of something that happened to me when I was a kid. It's not scary or spooky, but it's definitely weird, so I want to know what you guys think about it. So when I was really young, I was like 3 or 4 years old. And I know that's such a young age to remember any memories, but this was so weird that I still remember it. I was playing outside while my mom was working outside, and I saw this huge ladybug crawling from underneath our house. When I say huge, I mean huge. Like it was like this big and it was just crawling. So then I turn around, I look away to yell for my mom. And right after I yell "Mom," I turn back around and this ladybug has disappeared completely. Like it was just gone. And then the next day when my mom was taking a shower, so she was in the shower and I was in the bathroom, like outside of the shower, I see this ladybug, same one, huge ladybug, crawling from out of the closet. I look away again and I'm like, "Mom," and then I turn around and it's gone. I still don't know to this day what that was. And every time I think about it, I'm like, that was so bizarre. And I've never seen it after that. And I swear, guys, this happened. If anything like that has ever happened to you guys, I'd be curious to know what your stories are. So please let me know in the comments. Let's move on to the next one. This one says, "I saw an identical copy of myself in the woods when I was 12. Exactly as the title says, I saw an identical copy of myself when I was 12. I was living in PA, getting ready to move to NC. I was living in a townhouse at the time, but one on the corner where there was a huge neighborhood playground plus basketball court. Right behind the playground, there was this field. It wasn't like huge, but it was decently sized, and then there were woods behind it. I went out into the field one last time before we had left the house for good. I was wearing this corny pink t-shirt from like Walmart that said something about boys being losers, skinny jeans, and these weird light-up shoes. As I was walking further into it, I saw it. There was someone who had my exact facial features, wearing my exact outfit, same hairstyle, same birthmark, same everything. I just stared at it in disbelief because I assumed I was just seeing things, but then it started moving. She walked up to me and paused for a moment before saying, "Don't leave." I stopped there, frozen for a while, and then she started shaking her head no before just turning around and walking away. I haven't seen anything like it since, and anytime I tell someone about it, they immediately assume I'm lying. I wasn't tired when this happened. I obviously wasn't drunk or high. I just saw it. It wasn't like a brief reflection I could have seen in a body of water. We were standing around trees and dirt. It creeps me out to think about it, and I still don't know what it could mean. I thought that maybe it's connected to these two kids in my neighborhood who always told me they could see and talk to ghosts, and when I asked them to prove it, they started listing my dead family members. I would have been 7 at the time, and they were 8 and 10. Neither of them knew my last name. Their parents didn't know my name to begin with. I would just see them at the park, and that happened. They told me how they died, and I later confirmed with family members that in fact was how they died. I don't know how these two instances could be connected, but I feel like they somehow are. That's really weird, but I don't disbelieve this person. Alright, so this next one is kind of similar too, about seeing weird things, except I think this one is a lot more creepier than the other two. It says, "This is my story. This happened years ago when my family lived in a small house right beside a busy road. Across that road there were stores, everything from a Walmart to a bunch of food places, but our side, it was all woods, thick, quiet, and shaded. My grandparents lived just on the other side of those woods. The walk through the trees took a minute or two, and I'd made the trip more times than I could count. Sometimes I'd come across a raccoon or a deer, but that was normal, nothing out of the ordinary. One day, my mom was over at my grandparents' place, and I was home alone. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind where the air is full of birds singing and everything was peaceful. So I decided to walk through the woods and join her. I stepped into the trees, surrounded by the warmth of the sunlight filtering through the leaves and the sound of birds singing. Everything felt normal until I heard a voice. I stopped. "Did I hear someone?" I said out loud, scanning the woods. Then I heard it again, my name. It was my mom's voice, clear as day, calling to me. At first, I didn't think much of it. She probably knew I was coming and had stepped outside to call for me. But then I realized something was strange. The voice wasn't coming from the direction of my grandparents' house. It was coming from deeper in the woods. "Mom?" I called out, confused. "Why are you out here?" No answer. Just my name again. Same tone, same pitch, no urgency, no variation, just the exact same voice, over and over. I started walking towards it, slowly at first. Maybe she needed help? Maybe something had happened. I called out again, and she responded, always with the same name. That's when it hit me. Something was wrong, very wrong. The woods had gone silent, completely. No birds, no wind, no bugs, not even the faint hum of cars from the busy road just behind me. It was like the world had just stopped. My heart began to race. I turned, and that's when I saw it. Up on a small hill, partially hidden in the trees, stood a tall, dark figure. No face, no movement, just standing there, watching. I ran as fast as I could. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was inside my house, the door locked behind me, every curtain drawn. I collapsed by the window, staring outside for what felt like hours. The days that followed me were filled with unease. I felt watched every time I was alone, every time it got dark. I never told my parents. I couldn't. I was too scared they'd laugh it off, or worse, that saying it out loud would make it real again. A year passed. We moved to another town, and for a while everything felt normal again, peaceful. Eventually, I forgot about the woods. Then one night, months after the move, my cousin came over to hang out. We laughed, watched movies, the usual. He left late, and I went to bed not long after. To describe my room, my bed was right under the window. I laid down, closed my eyes until I heard it. A voice, my name. It was the same way my cousin says it, same pitch, same inflection, but it was wrong, distorted, and it was coming from right outside my window. I froze, eyes wide, breath caught in my throat. The voice repeated my name again and again. I didn't move. I didn't respond. I didn't even think. It kept going for what felt like an hour. I didn't sleep that night or the next. Eventually, it stopped. And to this day, I've never had another incident, and I hope I never will. That story gave me the chills. Stories like this that have no explanations are the ones that scare me the most. This next one is also really creepy. It says, "My sleep paralysis demon." This happened to me about a month or so ago. I was in an off and on relationship for about 6 months with this guy, a very bad one. He was an alcoholic and just mentally insane, yet I still decided to stay and push through. However, every time I would go over and come back home, I would notice these bruises on my legs the next day. Mind you, he was never physical towards me. Yet. At first, I just brushed it off, but the more I went over, the more I would get them. At first, they looked like little bite marks, and then they would turn into a big bruise. I thought I was getting allergies from his cats. IDK. Time went on, and then eventually he started biting me at random times. My legs, my arms, my stomach, etc. We would be watching a movie, and he would turn around and just start biting me, hard enough that it would leave big bruises, and you could see the bite marks. He had no explanation as to why, he just had the urge to bite me. One night, I had really bad sleep paralysis. Mind you, it's been forever since I had sleep paralysis, and one like this, I couldn't move or speak, but I was able to open and close my eyes. I knew what was going on, so I kept telling myself this was all fake, and to wake up. Meanwhile, my eyes are closed. I opened my eyes again, and I was in his room, laying upward, but all I could see was his ceiling and his ceiling fan. The lights were very dim. I couldn't move, but I was able to move my eyes around. Then when I looked back towards the ceiling, he was standing over me with this demonic face looking, no expression, but just a blank stare, just staring down, watching me. I tried moving and showing him signs that I was stuck and needed help, but he just started laughing at me in a deep demonic way. I finally was able to wake up. I was scared and kept telling myself none of this was real, and I tried going back to sleep. The next day, I went over and I told him all about it, and he even got scared and kept denying it, saying, no, I didn't do that, and that didn't happen. I knew that was my sign to get up and walk away from that situationship, especially the things he had put me through, and to never look back, and thankfully, I haven't since. What do you guys think? First of all, that guy sounds really weird. I'm glad she's out of that situationship, but oh my gosh, that is terrifying. I've had sleep paralysis once before and it was really scary. So this happened to me this past May when I went to the Fittest Experience CrossFit competition. It was the night that I flew in and I was staying at my friend's house. She let me sleep in her guest bedroom. And this happened the first night that I was there. I was sleeping really deeply. Sometime during the middle of the night, I woke up, or I thought I woke up. I had such clear awareness of the room around me. I could see exactly where the dresser was, exactly where the door was. Like I knew exactly where every single pillow was and where I had put my phone on the bed. I've only been to her house one other time, so I shouldn't have known this room that well. And I didn't know it well enough to like have every single detail in my memory like that. So that's what makes me think that my eyes were open and that I was awake. But I couldn't move at all. My body was just stuck there in that position that I was laying in. A lot of people get sleep paralysis when they're laying on their back, but I was laying on my side. And I saw that the door to the guest room that I was sleeping in was open, and I knew before I had went to bed that I had shut that door, but I now saw that it was open. And the scariest part was that I saw a shadowy figure standing there. And at first, I thought it was my friend. So I was trying to yell at her. I couldn't exactly yell because my body was stuck, but I tried yelling at her. I was like, "Girl, turn on the lights. You're freaking me out. Like, turn on the light." But I knew it wasn't her. I had a feeling it wasn't her because the dark figure was of a shape of a man. I don't know how long that lasted. I don't think it was very long because then I actually woke up, noticed I was still laying in that same position, and I checked my phone and it was 3 a.m. The door was shut to that room and then the figure was gone. So that's how I knew that I had actually woken up. But I was so scared to fall asleep for the rest of the night. And I was surprised that I had dreamt the whole thing because of how clear I could see the room and everything around me. I think this was the first time something like this has happened to me, and I hope it's the last time. But it was so scary. I would not wish that upon anyone to see something like that. Okay, so next one is called The Man Who Knocked on My Car Window at 3 a.m. I was driving back from work at 3 a.m., exhausted and barely keeping my eyes open. I pulled over at a rest stop to get a few minutes of sleep. Not even 10 minutes later, I woke up to a loud knock on my driver's side window. My heart froze. A man stood there, face hidden under a hood. He didn't say a word, just kept knocking, slow and steady. When I turned on my headlights, he stepped back into the fog and vanished. I never saw his car, never heard footsteps, just silence. That was the last time I ever stopped at a rest area at night. A guy in a black hood that just vanishes, that is extremely creepy. This actually happened to me once too, and I was really scared. So when I was in college, I would go to the gym really early in the morning. One morning, I got in my car to drive to the gym that was on campus from my apartment. So I was stopped at a stop sign to turn onto the road, and a guy came up and he knocked on the driver's side window. At this time in the morning, nobody was around. It was dark outside. I was so scared. I actually jumped and I screamed. And what I should have done was drove away in that situation, but my dumbass rolled the window down to see what he wanted. Luckily, it was just another student from school, and he had gotten locked out of his apartment, and he said he needed a ride to campus. Again, I should have been like, call the emergency apartment complex number, but my dumbass let him get in the car and I gave him a ride to campus. This was pretty harmless, but if I could go back, I would not do that again. All right, that's it, guys. Please like and subscribe if you guys liked any of these stories, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.